I've always liked the idea of being one of those YouTubers who always has their finger on the pulse. Not that I really even think of myself as a YouTuber, but there are so many channels on this platform who are always on top of it and always reporting on the latest news. I love talking about movies, and I recognize that I could probably get a lot more views if I talked about movies that are relevant right now. But it's hard for me to find the time to catch a movie as soon as it hits theaters, and when I do, sometimes I just don't have anything to say about it. Just last month, I went to go see Deadpool and Wolverine starring Hugh Jackman of Eddie the Eagle fame, and I didn't make a video on it, even though it's a huge movie, because I have zero opinions on it. That is not the case with Megalopolis. For starters, I was very morbidly curious about this movie. I've been following it for years, and now that it's out in theaters, I moved heaven and earth to be able to go see it. So I went to go see Megalopolis by myself on a Friday night, because that's where I am in my life right now, and I wrote the outline for this video on my phone as I was watching. And I was not being a disrespectful moviegoer and distracting the other people in the theater, because I was the only one there. Megalopolis is not the worst movie I've ever seen, it's not even my least favorite, but I don't love it. And keep in mind that everything I'm about to say is my opinion on a movie I saw for the first time about an hour ago. I'm going to start with the more surface level stuff and then slowly work my way inward like an onion or perhaps an apple, and I think the apple's rotten right to the core. Emphasis on to the core, you'll see what I mean later. I'm going to start by giving you some background information in case you're not really familiar with this movie and the lore behind it. So this movie was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, one of the most well-known and iconic directors of all time, and this was a dream of his for decades, and he spent millions of his own money making it. He also made a point of casting quote-unquote canceled actors like Shia LaBeouf and Dustin Hoffman, who both have some pretty concerning allegations against them. The filming process was reportedly an absolute disaster. There was a lot of hiring and firing, and Coppola was apparently very absent on set. And during filming, he was accused of sexual misconduct. There are definitely examples of films in which things like sexual misconduct allegations and absent directors and hiring and firing can result in a kind of half-baked, problematic, dumb and stupid movie. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I know that they're out there. The film was eventually released on September 27th, and so far has been a huge flop and became kind of a laughingstock on the internet.
Go back to the club.
But Megalopolis was made by a man with a vision. Francis has got something to say. Let's start with the visuals. This movie looks very expensive. I don't have any trouble believing that hundreds of millions of dollars were spent making it. I don't think that money was used very wisely. There are moments in the movie where the green screening and the CGI does look very bad, but there are just as many shots that look absolutely beautiful. The editing is also wild and not in a good way. There were some sequences in this movie that almost reminded me of... No, I can't even say it. Let's move on to the acting. I'm just going to go one by one through each cast member. Adam Driver is giving a great performance as usual. Giancarlo Esposito is probably my favorite performance in the movie. I just found him to be very charming and very believable. He honestly feels more like a real person than any other character in this movie. And Natalie Emmanuel, well, she's very beautiful. This is the first movie I've ever seen her in, and I really don't love this performance. I don't want to say it's entirely her fault, because I think a big part of it is the way she's being directed in this movie, but I just found her to be very stiff and wooden, and her accent kept slipping, which was kind of distracting. Lawrence Fishburne did fine with what he was given. Aubrey Plaza is doing her Aubrey Plaza thing, which is always wonderful, and I'm always charmed by Jason Schwartzman. He's like my second favorite actor, and I kept looking forward to the next time I would see him on screen. And he's even given a scene where he gets to play the drums. Do you guys remember Phantom Planet? Jason is on a hot heater right now, and it's kind of bittersweet for me because I am very happy for him, but I also realize that the more booked and busy he stays in Hollywood, the further and further he gets from the recording studio to give us a new Coconut Records album. And Shia LaBeouf is a freak. I didn't really care for his performance, and the first few times I saw him on screen, for just a split second, I mistook him for Thomas Mars, and for that I would like to apologize. To Thomas, I love your music. So now I'm going to start really diving into the story, and I am going to be spoiling the movie. So if you're planning on seeing it and you haven't yet, skip to this timestamp. So in terms of basic premise, Megalopolis is about Caesar, played by Adam Driver, an architect living in New Rome who envisions a futuristic utopia called Megalopolis. But outside of that basic premise, there is so much stuff going on. The pacing of this movie is really bizarre. The events of Megalopolis have to take place over the course of at least a year, but the film spends so much time on certain plot beats and completely rushes through others, and everything gets really confusing. There are also these title cards and narration throughout that I assume are meant to provide structure and break the story up into chapters, but they really don't. There are so many plot beats that don't get resolved or are included for seemingly no reason. We're told that the material being used to build Megalopolis is unsafe, but we never find out why, and the film ends with the city being built anyway. The mayor admits to having been involved in the death and disappearance of Caesar's wife, but Caesar himself refuses to learn more about it, and we never get an answer, which was like the one thing I genuinely wanted to hear more about. Caesar straight up gets shot in the face and has like a skeleton eye for a solid chunk of the movie. I will say that the conflict between Caesar, the mayor, and Julia and the circumstances surrounding Caesar's wife's death was the most interesting part of the movie for me, and I was really invested in it, although I don't think that was supposed to be the standout. I think the writing was probably the worst part of this movie, in my opinion. There are moments where it seems to be aiming for this snappy, Sorkin-esque dialogue, but it just comes off as overly wordy and pretentious. This film thinks it's very clever. And I'm sorry, but I really didn't like the way the female characters were treated in this movie. They aren't given much personality outside of what they can offer the male characters in the story: advice, wealth, sex. Let's look at the main female characters in the movie. There's Julia, who starts out as Caesar's apprentice, but later falls into the role of love interest and mother of his child. There's Wow Platinum, a reporter who uses her sexuality to seduce the men around her into giving her power and is then killed by Jon Voight's boner. Yep, she also used to fuck Adam Driver and still really wants to. Everyone in this movie wants to fuck Adam Driver. Even Caesar's dead wife is only there to give Caesar a tragic backstory that Julia can help him work through. There aren't many other women of note in Megalopolis other than Caesar and Julia's mothers, and also this posse of high-class ladies who just kind of writhe around and breathe in each other's faces. Julia's shown to be kind of in their circle at the beginning, and she even kisses Chloe Fineman's character, but that's really only meant to show the viewer how wild and frivolous these ladies are. Most importantly, Megalopolis is clearly striving towards some kind of social commentary, but any points it tries to make are either muddled or insanely unsubtle. The film throws swastikas and Confederate flags and actual footage of actual Hitler in your face, but it does so for shock value and not in service of a greater point. Like, you're not going to end racism by building a skyscraper shaped like a plant. I don't know what to tell you. It feels like an insanely rich, out-of-touch old man's opinion on the flaws in modern-day society and the ways that we should fix them. It feels like that because it is like that. In a lot of ways, Megalopolis is the film version of Corey Feldman's Angelic to the Core. A veteran of the film industry spends years completing a project that he feels is his magnum opus, somehow managing to get some big names attached, and then spending the runtime of that project speaking on issues that he lacks the perspective to truly analyze or offer real solutions to, and upon its release, the project becomes a laughingstock. I do think Megalopolis could have been great. With a tighter script and more fleshed out ideas, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I honestly think it would have been great as a series of vignettes. You could have Caesar as the common thread throughout each short film, and you could explore these social issues through the viewpoint of different characters on all sides of the conflict. But I honestly don't think Megalopolis could have ever been anything other than exactly what Coppola wanted it to be. It feels like Coppola had all of these ideas for shots and scenes and characters that he was insistent on cramming into one film, even if the pieces didn't quite fit together. Megalopolis feels like the unaltered vision of someone who refused to compromise on anything. In the film, Megalopolis, the city, is presented as a solution to social inequity and conflict, but we never really learn how or why. And I think Megalopolis, the film, suffers from the same pitfalls. It thinks it's making a grand statement about utopia and society, but in reality, it isn't saying much of anything at all. I rate Megalopolis a 3 out of 10, and it probably would have been a 4 if Jason Schwartzman had been in more of it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you liked me, be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you want, you can even turn notifications on so you'll be the first to know when I'm building a skyscraper shaped like a plant. Anyways, that's gonna be all for me. I've gotta go back to the club. Bye!